I'm here at LSI Europe in Barcelona with Andrew Glass of Vivasure. Thank you so much for joining me, Andy.
Thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about what you're doing at Vivasure?
Yeah, so Vivasure is a very innovative company. We are changing the way that large hole closure is being done in the marketplace. So as you may know, some of the hottest markets over the last 10 years in medical devices have been transcatheter aortic valve replacement, transcatheter mitral valve repair or replacement, and all of these procedures require very large holes. And so the market now, just for the closure of those holes itself, is about $500 million and has been growing at double digits. But the technology for the large hole closure is still the same technology people used 20 years ago. And so if you're to look at these procedures in terms of complications, the most common complication has very little to do with the heart, but actually is all related to the actual closure of the large hole that is being created. So we have a very innovative approach. We're doing a fully bioresorbable patch. So typically now cardiologists and surgeons will use sutures, which have their own challenges, or a collagen plug. But we've got an innovative, fully bioresorbable patch that can be used to close the hole, and we get fantastic data. It's very quick and easy to use, and yeah, we're on our way now.
So it's my understanding that there are about 1 million transcatheter structural heart procedures being performed globally each year. Is there a specific one that your technology is indicated for, or can be used for all of them?
No, it's agnostic. So we're agnostic to the procedure. Any large hole arterial closure we can do.
Is it for all cardiovascular procedures then?
Yeah, all cardiovascular. So it includes like EVARs and TAVRs, for example, that we can close. Actually, some of our biggest fans here in Europe are surgeons and not cardiologists for EVARs and TAVRs.
What are your fans saying about your technology?
They like that it's fully bioresorbable. They like that there's no pre-procedure technique. So currently, if you use sutures or collagen-based approaches, you need to do measurement or put in the sutures before you start your procedure, whereas with ours, you can do the main procedure and then just show up and close. So, and particularly for acute cases where you've got, time is of the essence to do all this pre-procedure prep, is a real challenge for cardiologists and surgeons. So we're able to remove that step and get going. So yeah, these are the things that people really like about our product.
What are the advantages of a bioresorbable plug over collagen?
So collagen, as you know, is really good at clotting. But the challenge that you have often with collagen plugs is that sometimes they can clot the whole artery, right? And so when you're putting in a very large hole a lot of collagen, you have a risk of closing the whole artery down. And so while it's very easy to use the product, and when things go bad, they can go very bad very quickly. Whereas with our product, because you see we have a very low footprint in the vessel, we're not ever occluding the artery. In fact, we've done over 1,200 cases. We've never had once an occlusion of the vessel. And so we're able to avoid those complications that collagen brings in these large hole procedures.
How does PerQseal compare to Vascade from Humanetics?
Yeah, so Vascade is primarily for small hole closure. So they have an indication up to kind of 12 to 14 French, depending upon if it's a venous or artery procedure. Whereas we're focused on the larger holes. So we go up all the way to, on the venous side, we're going to go up to 30 French, which is quite large. And on the arterial side, we go up to 26 French. So we're on the higher end of that scale, and we don't do small hole procedures. So that's where the main difference is they have a different application. They use a very interesting approach of closing the hole with a nitinol, and then they have a bit of collagen there. It's a very low footprint, and they've obviously done extremely well. But the main difference is the applications of what they're going after.
Yeah, it actually sounds like it's quite different when you consider that it's nitinol, collagen, and small hole closure. Are you guys looking at, maybe down the road taking PerQseal into that territory as well?
No, we've gotten lots of questions about, aren't you going to do a small hole? And really, as we look at the market, it's an attractive market, the small hole, but there's a lot more competition there. And the real clinical need is in these large hole procedures where effectively As I mentioned to you, the technology hasn't evolved over 20 years, and this market is continuing to grow. So as you mentioned, now there's 1 million procedures is going to continue to grow at least at double digits. And again, as I mentioned to you, the technology is still is outdated with higher complication rates, more complexity, long learning curves, et cetera. So that's what we're addressing, yeah.
We've talked briefly about Haemonetics' Vascade product. It's my understanding that they've also made an investment in your company.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about what that process has been like and what Haemonetics is bringing to your business?
Yeah, so really, I've said it many times, I don't think it's any secret that we found, I think, the perfect partner in Haemonetics. So Haemonetics, as you mentioned, they have a small hole closure portfolio from Cardiva. It's doing extremely well. You can go to the financial reports and see just how it's changing the nature of the company. And they were interested in a large hole closure solution. And we were interested in raising a big round for our U.S. pivotal, and so that's how the conversation got off and running. And they did their diligence, and they came back and say, look, we really want to lead this round, but we would like to, have the right to buy you after you complete your pivotal. So that's how the structure went, and it was very exciting for us because not only are we getting the financial aspect to it, but they have a lot of experience in closure. They have a lot of experience running pivotal studies in the U.S. And furthermore, they have experience on the venous side, which is something that we were starting to get into. So they were bringing a lot to us in terms of knowledge, experience in the marketplace, and obviously they've done extremely well commercializing. So the partnership was well received by the board, and we're very excited to work with them.
I'm sure the board was very excited knowing that Haemonetics acquired Cardiva for $500 million as well. So that option to acquire you guys as well must be very exciting to everyone that you're working with.
Yes, yeah. I mean, everybody likes an exit. So,
Is that the plan then, to go for an exit, or are you guys looking to grow the company still?
I think the preference right now for the company would be to exit. We have thought about, once we get the FDA approval, assuming the Haemonetics piece, for whatever reason doesn't work out, then yeah, we'd have to go raise some funds and commercialize in the U.S. and outside the U.S. So, but I think the preference right now is, we've got a great partner, a great valuation from Haemonetics, and so we're excited to move forward with that.
Andy, I know that you were at LSI Europe last year. You're talking about this U.S. pivotal trial. What's sort of new with your company? Is it focused largely on this U.S. pivotal trial that you've got going on?
Yeah, I mean, we've really had to pivot to the U.S. and interacting with the FDA. That's been a huge shift over the past year with the company. The other thing that's happening for us is we're not just resting on our laurels. We're developing newer products. So we have our PerQseal Elite that's going to be doing its first in man any day now. And that's going to be intended for arterial and venous, and it's got a lot of simplifications and improvements in the delivery mechanism of our patch. So that's going on in the background. But yes, the main focus has been the U.S. pivotal, working with the FDA, getting the IDE approved, all these things that go into that. And it's been a huge task, and we've managed it. Very proud of the team for working through a lot of the different dynamics. And we've also started to build up a bit of a team in the U.S., not just for regulatory and clinical reasons, but also to support the cases as we're doing them there as well. So yes, the company has really started to shift more and more to the U.S. over the past year since we met in London. So.
How far out are you guys from having or obtaining that regulatory clearance, if all goes well?
So it's a PMA submission. So we are expecting by the end of the year that we'll complete the pivotal. It's a 30-day follow-up, and then so sometime at beginning of next year we would submit, and then that starts the clock with the FDA.
So it sounds like we have some exciting news to look forward to in the near future then.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, goodness, fingers crossed. By a year from now, where are we meeting in 2025 or 2024? Sorry.
For Europe?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know yet. We'll have to wait for that announcement to come out.
Yeah. So by that time, hopefully we will have we'd be looking at getting FDA approval for our PerQseal family in the U.S.
I know that you've been to LSI. This is your second LSI. What brings you back?
Well, a couple things about LSI. One is I think this has really become the meeting for networking and connecting here in Europe. I would say last year there was a fair amount of people, but this year I've just been amazed of how many people we've gotten to come here, not just from Europe, but also from the United States in terms of investors and companies. It's very impressive. And so I think particularly for here in Europe, if you are a company that's looking to build your name, get into the community, it's probably the meeting you have to go to now to make the connections and start to build a rapport and also find funding, which is a critical piece of all med tech.
As an LSI alumni now, is there any advice you could give to a company that's maybe considering coming to an LSI event in the future?
Well, yeah, I would say come, but I think make the most of the time. I mean, it's a great structure you have to connect with people, see other companies. I think you learn a lot, not just from the investor meetings that you have, but when you talk to the other CEOs about what they're going through and what they're dealing with. We had a lot of conversations about MDR, which is a fun topic now downstairs, and I think it's really helpful to get a sense of, okay, yeah, you're seeing that, or we're seeing this, and the knowledge is power. It really helps you as you're trying to guide these companies to change medicine. So.
Yeah, I've heard a few innovators mention that the camaraderie with their peers is an especially important element of these events. You mentioned that the MDR. How have you guys been handling that? Has it been a tremendous pain for you, or is it something you were prepared for?
We actually jumped quite on the bandwagon to switch to MDR because we have a great quality team, and we felt, look, we could get this done. Let's get out of the way. And so when we got our full MDR certification last summer as a company, we were, the stats were less than 10% of companies that gotten the MDR certification, and of the small companies, it was even smaller percentage. So we were very proud of that. And then obviously things changed with MDR, so we kind of scratched our head. But I think there's a bit of frustration because there's some nice things about MDR, right? So for example, running clinical trials in Europe, you wouldn't have to, currently in the old structure and still today, you have to go to each country's competent authority to get approval. So if you're running a trial, say in 3 or 4 countries, you got to go to 3 or 4 competent authorities to get approval. One nice thing about MDR when it's finally implemented is you get one, it's good for all of Europe. But that's not implemented yet, right? So some of the good things I think people are expecting from MDR are not in place just yet. And the other thing that's really challenging is the CE bodies that are now reviewing your applications, as well as trying to get the previous applications approved and worked through. They are overwhelmed with this. And so you start interacting with your CE marking body, and they're like, well, okay, yeah, but that's going to take us a year, or that's going to take us this amount of time. And it's just because they're overwhelmed with the amount of work that's happened. So that's the bigger frustration for us is just getting an interaction with them. And then when you start interacting with them, they're still trying to figure out some of this. So the big frustration with MDR, I don't think necessarily is the rules themselves. I think we're fine with the rules. Everybody seems to, thinks they make sense. But the implementation of them and interpretation of them is where things are really slowing down. So, in the old days, you'd expect a CE mark in a few months. And now, we were talking internally, maybe a year is a fair assumption for when you submit. It's hard to say, right? So that's what's really slowing down. And I talked to a lot of companies, they're like, oh, well, we wanted to upgrade or change this, but we have to get a new CE mark for that. But, the timelines just keep getting pushed out and out and out. So I think that's the frustration for people is there's a lot of great innovations you want to bring to patients. Unfortunately, they're being slowed down by the paperwork and the implementation of it right now. So I think a lot of people are frustrated with that. Another thing that's quite interesting is, as you talk to a lot of companies downstairs, is that there's a lot more kind of U.S. first mentality amongst European companies. So historically you would start here, get things going, and then go to the U.S. And now I think a lot of people are saying, you know what, not necessarily because they think it's going to be easier to go to the U.S., but because there's more certainty about the process, and they know exactly what they need to do to get there. And obviously the U.S. is the biggest market in medical devices, so people are very much like, hey, well, let's just start with kind of a US-based approach, start working with the FDA early, engage with them, and then get going on that, whereas dealing with pick your CE body and a process here in Europe, you don't know how long it'll take or what the result will be. So
there's certainly been a lot of doom and gloom with the MDR that's been permeating the zeitgeist and the discussion about medtech industry. It's great and to hear that there are advantages to it as well. So I thank you for sharing that with us. And it sounds like your proactiveness to just dive into MDR and get prepared is going to serve you and your company well. Andy, thank you so much for joining me in the studio today.
Okay, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.